Hello guys, welcome back to our React Native live coding series. This is episode number 4 and today we're gonna be talking about few different bits and bobs. But first, as you can see, we are having loads of red errors, loads of underlines. Just everything is in red. It indicates that there is something wrong with the app, and this is what I actually wanted to start with. Later on we'll be talking about something more exciting, about something that is actually going to cut a few corners for us. It's going to be a quick win. It's going to give us a few different ideal features to help us develop our app real quick, so stay tuned. But first we want to take a look at those horrible red screens right here, and we want to figure out what is wrong, right? So as you remember, last week we installed ESLint, and we got all the rules in place. So if you take a look at the ESLint JSON file, you can see that all the rules are in there. But now by running the app, you can see that there are so many different errors, right? There are so many different problems that we are running into, and you can hover over those problems and ESLint would actually give you a hint of what it is. So in this case, the render should be placed after the other members of this class, right? So the render method should always be a last thing in your class. So I'm just going to really quickly change all of those ESLint problems. I'm going to fix it, and then we'll move on to the real cool feature that I want to tell you about this week. And this is going to be definitely more exciting than fixing these errors, but it's got to be done. I mean, you know, development is not only about doing what you love or doing really cool things. It's also about fixing your code and making it more maintainable. So it's good to spend some time right now to fix those things. And I don't really like, so some people do put underscores. They begin the method with the underscore, and this indicates that this method is actually a private method. That's what they like to have. It's like a convention. I don't particularly like this sort of convention, so I'm going to remove it. And then of course this is just a redundant else statement right there, because we do return. So if it's dev, and dev is basically our development environment that Expo provides, if it's dev, we return something, right? So then if it's not, then we return something else, and we don't really have to use that else in there. It's just a redundant kind of usage of the keyword. Okay, that looks that looks promising. Okay, so now if we save, oops. Right, so one expression per line. Whereabouts is that? Right. That's actually React. It's actually React itself. Hold on a second. What is actually this learn more button do? Ah, I see. So it basically returns this kind of returns this button. So we can fix it like this, and we could actually ignore this def. It says that it's not defined as it's a global variable. So we probably could just ignore it. You know, we could add ESLint ignore this line. Let me actually show you how to do it. If we do ESLint ignore line, can't really remember what the command is called. But we can easily Google it. Right. So we could do either this. Oops. Right. That didn't work very well. That didn't work very well. As I think. I don't think it's actually gonna work. But, by the way, you can see that the app runs okay. Okay. It completely ignores this this comment for some reason. But we can ignore it for now. I mean, normally I would probably just create like a... let's do it real quick. Why not? If not now, then when? So I'm going to create a lib folder where I'm actually going to add utilities file. And within those utilities, and because it's going to be our first function, we're going to call it is dev and that is going to be a function. Could be either a function or it could be just this, right? So then in our home screen, we could actually import that is dev from utils. So at least this gets rid of that problem in this file, right? And then we can add whoops. Right. Still doesn't really like it. It must be... Ah, there we go. So we kind of had to go real hardcore with this. But at least you can just disable this kind of stuff. You could add a rule. I mean, it's basically saying that this is not defined as because this is the global variable that is set by Expo. And it's not visible in this file, but it's actually accessible, right? So we can have a condition for this particular reason for this particular line of the code, because we have a rule that says if there are no defined variables, then please do let me know. But in this particular case, we want to disable it, right? We want to get rid of this rule in a way. And instead of doing it in every single file where you use this variable, then you can just create a utility, disable it there, and whenever you import it, you don't have that problem anymore, right? Which is a quick win for us in this case. Otherwise, obviously, we want to keep the rule, so I wouldn't recommend to get rid of the rule, because we want to have that rule in place. Right, so that is great. There are, as you can see, there are several places where we would have to just clean our code a little. So our components should actually be just functions, pretty much. It should just be a pure function components, dump components if you like, which only take certain params. Okay, so right now it's complaining because obviously we've changed a couple of things. Focused, prop types, boolean, and name. I would assume, I'm guessing right now, so it's better that you would actually check. Better that you would actually check what types this should be. Oh, sorry, I missed that. String. Gosh, not thinking. Okay, so as you can see, this is now a pure function component, right? So let's just check where it's been used, and it's been used in the main tab navigator, and you can see that it's telling me about the semicolons, which I don't like. Right, so this is why it's really cool, right? So it shows you that that focused is missing its validation, which is fair enough. And yeah, and you could add props validation in there, but for now our aim was to clean up the components and other files. So as you can see, the link screen, you can do it either manually or you can just, so because we are using Prettier, I can just save it, or I can select it and do format selection, which would clean the file for me. But luckily I can just save it, and that basically gets rid of all the problems that we've got in there, which is quite cool. As you can see, the app is still working, which is great. We can still navigate through the app. We can still see all the values. Everything is sweet. Everything is still working as expected. So we've got our app cleaned up. Hold on, there was one more. This is the app file, the big boy. So we want to handle this as well. Quite like to have the methods written alphabetically. I quite like to have everything alphabetically. As you can see, they haven't done it alphabetically. Oh, did I? Oh no, they actually have. Oh, that's really cool. Well, obviously you want to import React first, and things from React Native, and then everything else, right? Export or whatever. So I do like to have a space between dependencies, like, I mean, global dependencies, the project dependencies, and I want to import app-related files separately. So I like to have this kind of space between, and then if I do import either utilities or constants, I would make another space between. But that's just a preference. I mean, it's only a, you know, personal preference, and everybody is different. I'm just showing you how I would normally do it. And this is obviously complaining about the structuring. Whoops. So this is it. Quite like to have props defined first, and then the state values, only because props is in alphabetical order, comparing to the state, right? So this is what we want. Okay, so this is missing props validation, which is keep loading screen. And I do like to do prop types as a static. I would assume this would be a boolean. And then prop types will be imported from prop types. Okay, so this is great. What is this stuff? Okay, that's cool. So that's pretty much everything. If we save, this is obviously going to prettify it for us. It's going to clean it all up, and now it's all looking pretty. Right, so this also complains because we should have a file, which would be a constant, for instance, which then exports all the required files from there, right? So as you can see in our constants, we've got colors, layout, but I would add I don't know, something called maybe assets. Something called like assets, right? And I would export, let's export it as a constant. Export constant, and I would call it, images, pictures, illustrations, and robot dev. This is it. Then robot prod. Whoops. Yes, so basically because we moved it to constant, now we just want to go a couple of levels up, because we are here, we go level up, so we go to source, then assets, then we have it, right? Which is great. So we've got our illustrations, which we can then import. As I said, quite like to import things just like that. Source, lib, oh, sorry, not lib, constants, assets, right? And then we have our illustrations here. So we're going to have robot dev and illustrations, robot prod. This is actually a really cool feature from Expo, by the way. So basically this gives you what is it? Hold on a second. I'm just going to tell you one thing at once. So this is a really cool feature from Expo, because you basically can load all the resources asynchronously, and you wait until all the assets are loaded, and then the app gets displayed, right? So the app keeps loading until everything is fetched, and then once it's all fetched, then you display the app. Otherwise you would have to kind of cache it or await manually. But anyway, let's get back to our problem, to our issue. What does it say? So it says that font family space mono is not a system font and has not been loaded through font load async, which is a lie, isn't it? Because I can see it's been loaded through there, so I don't really know what it is talking about. Let me actually. I don't think it. Yeah, there you go. So the error wasn't very specific. I mean, the problem was right there. The problem was with load async assets. I didn't save the file and it couldn't find it, but for some reason it skipped that file, probably because it's within Promise All and it's quite hard to debug. It just skipped the one which had a problem, went straight to font, and that's why it failed, which is fair enough. I'm going to add another file for fonts, and I'm going to call it fonts. So the font is going to be called space mono. Right, space mono. Oops, and then we can request it like so. Okay. So now we can actually do another cool thing, which is adding an index file in here, which is going to be importing default as fonts from fonts, and then we can import default as assets from assets, right? Whoops, made a typo in there. I'm actually going to think because we exported it as a constant, I think I have to import it like this and export it like that. So then instead of getting it directly from assets, I can just get it from constants, right? And then I can actually import our fonts as well and replace our space mono constant like this. Let's see if it all actually works as expected. Nope, didn't work. And that's because I think I have to No, I'm pretty sure should be importing it like this. Fonts.space mono. Fonts.space mono. Oh, sorry, my bad. I can actually call it assets. That's actually not a bad idea. Let's call it assets. They were just still not quite right. Ugh. I'm just doing it too quickly, I think. I'm not really thinking of what I'm doing. But yeah. There you go. There were just a few typos. Let's put it in the alphabetical order now. So we've got assets and fonts. I swear I think I can default as fonts. I would probably, yeah, I think I would have to export it as default. Like so. And then default as assets. But anyway, I mean, I would probably just do it forever. But instead, we actually want to get to do some cool things, right? So we don't really want to be focusing on this kind of like little thingies. Right, so the app is actually quite clean. We got rid of all the ESLint warnings and problems and things like that. So I'm actually going to make a commit and say ESLint cleanup, which is going to be pushed to our develop branch to our GitHub repo. And by the way, you can find the GitHub repo link below this video. So it's going to be in the description of this video of this live coding session. And now we are actually going to look at something that is really cool and that is going to help us to develop way quicker, right? So at the moment, we don't really have a backend services. We don't have backend services. We don't have a server-side support. And to have that kind of support, to have that kind of services or features, we would have to either build a database, build the API on top of it. We would have to do a lot of different things to actually get our data either stored or fetched from somewhere. Instead, there is a platform made by Google. I mean, they bought it probably like 4 years ago. Before it was a standalone app, they bought it. They created a Firebase under their brand, so it's Google Firebase with different features, and it's a platform which allows you to have all of those kind of features that you would expect from the server side or from the backend to be there for you, right? So you can see that there are some basic things like real-time database. Well, it's not really basic, but it's like a standard that you would expect when developing a mobile app, right? So you can have a cloud storage for your assets, you know, your files, your resources, and things like that. You can have a hosting to host your app. You can have real-time database, right? So if you want to have notifications within your app, and if there is something that changes in the database and you want to let your users know that there is something changed, or even if it's like an online chat or things like that, then there is that feature. You know, you can have a real-time database straight out of the package, which is absolutely great. You also have the authentication, which is again like a basic feature that you would expect to have. You will be expected to have that kind of thing in your app, and you don't have to manage it. It's all kind of like a cloud functions within that package, and you can just get it through the APIs. So you can have a server-side platform ready in no time for free, or, well, obviously you have to pay if you want to go for like a bigger enterprise kind of option. But I think we can actually fire it off for development, for our kind of app development, and see how it looks. So there are many other cool features that come with it, like Google Analytics and A/B testing and remote config and blah blah, dynamic links, which are the deep links, app indexing, predictions, and things like that, or in-app messaging, for instance, right? So you have all of those kind of features within Firebase, and this is great. And you can check all the pricing and the use cases and their products by going to firebase.google.com. But for now, I'm just going to click learn more about build better apps. I just want to see a quick overview of what it actually is. So obviously, I'm pretty sure you can start with something simple, and then you can probably just go for like an enterprise, or you can go for a bit more expensive option if you really need it to. Okay, so I think, I'm not entirely sure, I'm going to try it, but I think you can start it for free. That's basically what I'm hoping for. So I'm pretty sure that you have to kind of set an account within Google Firebase, and they will give you the API keys, or you know, the keys that you have to use within your code base to get connected to it. Okay, well, I was already logged into Google, so it already took me to the console. So I'm just going to start with adding a project, and I'm going to call it React Native PhotoApp. Right, so this is actually going to be my project ID as well. And I'm going to change it to United Kingdom, because that's where I live. And I'm going to change the Cloud Firestore location to Europe, because that's where I live, and I basically want to have a quick connection with it, because this is where I'm going to have my app. So I want to change the location to United Kingdom, and the server to be somewhere in Europe. Well, ideally in Western Europe, or even in the UK somewhere, but it doesn't really tell you. It just says Europe West. So I'm assuming that's close enough. Okay, so now there are some default settings for sharing Google Analytics for Firebase data. So we can share the analytics data with Firebase, fine. We can share the analytics data with Google to improve, blah, blah, blah. So you can have it, you don't have to do it. I'm going to include it because obviously they kind of give it to me for free. I mean, just to play with it at least. So I'm going to give them some analytics in return. Not actually going to be anything illegal or anything that I would be afraid of. So hopefully I can just send all of those analytics to them. I mean, I don't really mind. You don't have to go for it. It's absolutely optional, I think. So it says that the project is ready. It took a couple of seconds to actually spin off the project. And there we go. And I'm actually in the Firebase. And I can see that this is the dashboard. And this is actually, I used Firebase when it wasn't owned by Google. And that was like literally 4 years ago. And the interface was completely different. And trust me, it's changed a lot. So right now I'm on a dashboard where I can see that that there are some basic features which are rather interesting, because the authentication is definitely something that we are going to be looking at. This is definitely something that we are going to be getting. Then Cloud Firestore is the next generation of the real-time database. Well, real-time database is definitely something that rather pays my attention, right? So I'm kind of keen on getting this as well. And we can see all developed features in here. So we can see that there is a storage for our resources, for our assets, and this is probably what I'm gonna be using as well. There is the hosting, so that's probably where we are going to host our app. And there are some functions. Oh, sorry, this is only for web apps, right? So we don't need it. Well, we already use Expo, and this is where it's hosted anyway. But anyway, so authentication, Cloud Firestore, and the storage are definitely the three very useful features that I'm probably going to be going for. And then let's see what the quality features are. Okay, so you can have some sort of insight of your performance. You can have some crashlytics, so perhaps if something breaks, it just notifies you straight away there was something wrong, and you know you should be doing something about that. You should be fixing it. You should be fixing your app immediately. And the grow features are probably something to rather improve your app, to scale it, to make it a bit better. Okay, so cloud messaging. So this is something I would probably like to spend some time reading about. And by going into the cloud messaging, I would probably go through, learn it more and see what it's all about, because I'm not entirely sure what it all means, but it sounds like there are just so great features out of the box right in there, right? And this is something something very useful. So right, so okay, so we already do have okay, so you can see that there is the Spark. We've got the Spark plan, which is free. It doesn't cost you anything, and you can see what you can use for it. And then if you go for fixed, blah blah blah, or other plans, then you can compare all the plans and buy whichever you think is the most suitable for you. What we are actually going to do is to Let me see what it all means. Well, I would hope to get like a like a tooltip of what it means. This is the web app. This is not what I want. This is the Firebase that you can add to your iOS. But what I really would like to have is like a wrapper. Right. Integrations. You can integrate it with your apps, with either Slack, Jira, or some other places, which is very cool. But what I would really love to have is basically like a key which I can use to connect it to our app. But there you go. So there is a thing called React Native Firebase, and this is the integration, like a wrapper for Firebase, for React Native, to link it together, which is great because it gives you most of the features. So definitely authentication. We're going to be going for real-time database, cloud storage, dynamic links. This is very useful. For example, if you have, if you want the user to follow a certain link to get registered, or if you want to send them to existing paths within your app, this is a great thing to have. This is all we need, to be honest. There is some adverts mod, but yeah, great. So what we basically want to do is, oops, I don't think I actually clicked the right one. Clicked the Mac link. I'm just gonna go back quickly. And what we want to go to GitHub and read about it, right? Like we just want to get started and see how quickly we can actually do it. So they just show off how well tested and well typed and well documented everything is, which is promising, obviously. Now let's go to installing, because we trust them. We know that this is, oops, they actually don't have installation docs. So this is how great this is documented. Okay, so this is the main package that we probably want to add. Oh, this is not very good. Let's see if we can actually do Expo, React Native Firebase. Because don't forget that we use Expo. And obviously they handle things differently, because Expo is like a layer on top of React Native, and because we don't have the access to our iOS or Android files, then we have to ask Expo how they do it. Okay, so what they do is that they just install Firebase and they save it, and then we can import it from Firebase and initialize it, right? And then they tell you how to use it, how to store data and receive updates, and how to use the user authentication, which is actually great. So we are going to start with installing Firebase, to be fair. Oops. So we're going to yarn add Firebase. That's going to be our first step. So we want to add it to our repo. This is the config. This is the config that I'm probably gonna add to our library. And I'm going to create a new directory called inits, or it's just a shorthand of initializations. And then I'm gonna add Firebase.js in here, right? So we do have our Firebase init file. And there you go. So we don't need this kind of comment. So this is the config. Don't really have to call it Firebase config. I'm just gonna call it config because this is within this file, so it's fine. Right, and then so the API key, the auth domain key, all of those keys are something that we don't want to expose. So we don't want to just change it to whatever keys we are going to use and add it to our repo, because as you remember, our repo is public and people could actually see it. People could steal those kind of files, those kind of keys. So instead, there are a couple of things that you could do. First thing would be to have those variables within this file, but I would rather recommend to use the environment variables, and there is a common thing called .env file or .env files, because you can have .env.environment files as well. But those files basically have environment variables. And this is where you want to keep it. This is where you want to keep it, because you never actually expose them anywhere. So that file would be within your main. That file will be within your main directory, like so, starting with .env, and basically you would just ignore it, right? So you would do. You will do something like this, where that file is completely ignored. So what you want to have in there is your Firebase API key, and then whatever, right? So Firebase key will go here. Then Firebase auth domain. Firebase auth domain. Don't forget that it has to be, I don't know, is this called camel case? It's not, isn't it? Firebase auth domain key. And obviously you want to replace this with your real keys. Firebase db URL. This is something that you would get from Firebase, from their website, from your account. storage bucket. Storage bucket. Okay. And then, so depending on how you set those environment variables, but it will be something like, I don't know, import config from either React Native config or whatever it is going to be. Then you do this, and then you provide Firebase API key. So this matches your environment variable, right? And then you never commit this file. You just keep it locally, or you provide those variables in your CI or on your server. You know, you have to pass it somehow. Normally you can set them within CI tools in their settings, but this is exactly what you want, right? So let's see how Expo is doing it. So there are multiple threads out there about environment variables in Expo. Okay, so this guy basically sets it somewhere in right in the environment. I'm running low on the battery on my headphones, so I'm actually going to quickly connect them. Right, so okay. Right, I can hear myself back again. Sorry about that. Right, so it looks like they're actually putting them in like a file, but I would rather not do that. I don't want to make it too loud for you guys. If it's too loud, just let me know in the chat. But anyway, right, so this is definitely not what I want to do. React Native config, yeah, there you go. This is probably... This is probably a good one. Nope. So I'm not sure why they've been doing such crazy things. Hi, instead you can use export extra configuration property in app.json under export. Let's say my API key like this. Let me see, extra. Yeah, right. But this is not what I want to be. I don't want to check this in. So I definitely want to use .env, which is probably gonna be React native config. This is the one I'm aware of. This one I know quite well. As you can see, I've been already I already navigated to the GitHub repo. And here it is. I'm wondering if I can actually use it with Expo. So React native config Expo. If I can't use it with Expo, then I'll have to do something else. Let's see if that works with Expo. And otherwise, okay, this is quite promising. So the guys are using Babel plugin inline.env solution. Which is fair enough. This is probably what I'm gonna be going for myself. So I just need to... So what we have to do... we have to go to our package.json. Oh, sorry, this is actually... It's actually going to be... It's going to be added there. Right. Oops, whoops. Yarn add. Okay. I can't remember what's the yarn dev dependency saving command. I would assume it's like npm, just hyphen save dev. Oh, it's just dev with a couple of hyphens, maybe one hyphen. Going to be running this this live coding series, well, this live coding session for 5 more minutes tonight because of some of the, you know, technical difficulties I had previously. So let's just get this to work. Blah blah blah. So we need to go to our Babel config presets. No. Babel RC. presets, plugins. Wondering if this is actually going to work. So process env. Okay, looks quite promising. Firebase auth domain key. I'm actually going to copy it over from our .env file because I can't really remember what I called them. Storage bucket, auth domain, Firebase auth domain, Firebase API key. Okay, that is it. We don't need this then. And this is how it looks, right? So we've got our Firebase. Which is great. This is basically what we want. Export default. We are going to, okay. Oh, this is ugly. There you go. So we've got our function with our config. Oh, we could actually do it differently. We could do it like so. And then we could export. We could export it like this. Right? Or export it as a function. So then we would actually import it right here. We would call it Firebase init from src lib init Firebase. And then we could do Firebase init like so. Which is actually going to make it quite clean, I think. Because, you know, you probably can have more of them in here, and this is probably going to grow as we add more things. But this is how I would probably do it myself. Sorry, need to start that. Kind of. Our time tonight is actually about to finish, but it would be great to finish this episode with a working Firebase. Well, obviously it's not gonna work because our Firebase is not really it's not really getting the real keys, right? But this is not the case. What I actually want to check is if that works. So that would be a great. Okay, so the app still runs, so that means we're still good. That means we're still, there you go. So you can see that it's actually getting the Firebase API key. It's actually printed in the console down there. So this is great. So that means our .env file actually works, which is brilliant because now we won't commit this file. As you can see, it's ignored from Git, so it doesn't really show in the changes, and that file is only going to be stored locally, and then you would change those values per environment. So if you have your development or your staging or your either production or whatever environment, then you want to change those keys accordingly, those values, right? So that's great. So that means we can have our config file generated here, and then we just import it right there and initialize it, which is quite clean and nice, I think. So let's just make a last commit for tonight, and say that we added and environment variables plus Firebase added, right? Which is great. That's our second commit tonight, and we actually have now environment variables. Fantastic. We have our Firebase initialized. We just need to connect it, and this is what we are going to be focusing on next week. We'll make sure that everything connects as expected, and we'll actually start getting the features from it. So then we can see if the app is going to be reflecting to those changes, and if we will be able to have all of those features from Firebase, right? So we want to start adding the data. We want to be having, we want to be getting the information from the database. We want to be using the storage to store our illustrations, our files, and things like that. But that is gonna be next week, guys. So thanks very much for watching. Please do like the video, and don't forget to subscribe to our Cellcode Digital YouTube channel. Please do leave me comments below this video and let me know if you want me to focus on something different, or if you want me to discuss things differently, because I don't really know what you are looking for. So it would be really appreciated if you could leave me some comments, leave us some comments, and make sure that we actually have that kind of interaction. You know, I want to be helpful to you guys. I want to be here and do things that you guys would find enjoyable and useful, because this is what we are here for. Thanks very much again for watching, and see you next week. Have a great day.